Peter Flint, great guy, very passionate, a Christian who is a great scholar too. I'm not saying anything bad about him as a person. However, I've noticed I've used to watch his videos when I was a Christian. I used to be like, wow, this guy's he's showing me that all these scrolls, these ancient scrolls, line up better with the Christian Bible than they do with the Jewish Bible.
We
That's
do
fast.
have a clip that you could show about this.
We'll show it right now.
Let's do it.
Well, there's a very interesting verse in Psalm 22 in the King James. Dogs have surrounded me, a pack of evil ones close in on me, they have pierced my hands and my feet. Now you know this verse, and you would say this affirms for me crucifixion. Well, did you know that in fact, if you took this verse and spoke to a rabbi or even a Bible scholar, they would say, not so fast, because if you turn to the very Hebrew Bible that you use, your own Hebrew Bible, the Biblia Hebraica, you would be quite shocked, as I was, to discover it doesn't say that. The Hebrew Bible used by all churches today says, dogs surround me, a pack of evil ones close in on me, like a lion on my hands and feet. Now, some would say, you see, the church has messed with the text. They wanted to put Jesus in that text. They ignored the Hebrew, and they have pierced my hands and feet. That is a great challenge. But my friends, I've got good news for you. This passage is preserved in one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I know what I'm talking about because I am the editor of the scroll. And there it is. There it is. The Nachal Cheva Psalm Scroll. And it contains this passage. And there it is. In the Hebrew. My dear friends, what does it say in the oldest copy of Psalm 122 in the world? Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil ones has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and feet. Isn't that amazing? There you have.
I've dealt a little bit with this recently. I got into a back and forth with S.J. Thomason about this text, and I'm pulling my hair out at how she seems incapable of understanding what's going on here, but properly. But let's look at something like the NIV. So it's a famous passage. Jesus quoted the first verse of Psalm 22 on the cross. There's allusions to the imagery in Psalm 22 in the crucifixion scene. It's an important psalm in the crucifixion motif. Overzealous Christian apologists and defenders, and for a long time, have kind of pointed to this psalm as something of a miracle of fulfilled prophecy because of all the connections between Jesus and between the torture that the psalmist is enduring here. If you go down, I'll start reading at verse 14. I am poured out like water, all my bones are out of joint. And I'm reading here from the ludicrous New International Version translation of this. My heart is turned to wax. It has melted away within me. My strength has dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count my bones. People stare and gloat over me, and on and on. But that phrase in particular there in verse 16, they have pierced my hands and my feet, sounds an awful lot like a description of crucifixion,
right?
Of the nails piercing the hands and the feet. And that translation is derived from the Septuagint,
the Greek, because that's not in the Masoretic Text, right?
Correct. And
what does it say in the Masoretic Text, just for anyone to know?
The Masoretic Text actually reads, dogs surround me, a band of evil ones encircle me, like a lion, my hands and my feet.
Wow, that's a whole different meaning now.
It's a whole different thing, and it's frustrating because on the face of it, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay.
Like a lion, my hands and my feet. Well, welcome to Hebrew poetry, because
Exactly. How nothing can
lots of
translate
it's like
perfectly.
that.
Yeah, you can't
Uh,
translate text perfectly to English, and
No.
it makes sense.
And I think I mentioned on that stream actually with S.J. Thomason that I was on. I mentioned at one point, and Dr. Josh Bowen was on the stream with me, and he validated this as well. It's really frustrating how often within Hebrew poetry you will encounter sentences that simply don't have verbs, and it just it's a really, really difficult text.
Right.
So what has happened here? Well, first of all, I mean, we saw this clip from Professor Peter Flint talking about this text from the Dead Sea Scrolls,
Right.
that preserves this reading. They pierced my hands and my feet.
And basically, his argument, Peter Flint's argument, is that the Masoretic Text has it wrong.
Yes.
The Septuagint actually had it right, because the Dead Sea Scrolls confirms this.
Yes.
Now let's get into why he got to that conclusion.
So let's start with the fragment in question. This is it. Okay, this is from the Nachal Hever Psalm Scroll. And it's a fairly it's a little later. It didn't actually come from Qumran, it came from another site. And it dates to probably the end of the 1st century, maybe the beginning of the 2nd century CE. And like, you can see from this picture, right, how faded a lot of the letters are. I hate this program because
it's so faded that you almost don't even know if you can even translate it.
Yeah, I mean, I can recognize lots of those letters quite clearly.
See the
Certainly, can you see my cursor?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so like all this stuff here, like
That's legible
on
right there.
sort of the right side is really legible. The disputed text, the problematic text, occurs here.
Well, there's a big hole in it, first of all.
So you got, well, yeah. Here you got Hakofu. Here it is. You've got Kof here.
It looks like a lion to me.
It's not, though.
Okay. That's what
and
I'm
then-
just saying, that that's how hard it is to decipher.
It is very, or sorry, no, that's wrong. It's here. This is it.
That's the Kof?
This is the Kof. And this is the Aleph. You can probably see the Aleph a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I could see it now.
This is the Rish.
I definitely see the rest. That's an easy letter. That's a letter R. Yeah, that's.
But this is either a Vav or a Yod. Now
let me ask you this real quick: is a Yod in ancient Hebrew different than a Yod in modern Hebrew?
It depends on the manuscript you're looking at.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and this is one of the problems. You will very frequently see Hebrew manuscripts in antiquity where Vavs and Yods look almost identical to one another.
Yes.
That's not this particular manuscript. They are distinguished. So, and I will actually say that I think Professor Flint's reading, even though this is a nasty bit of work here.
Wow. Yeah.
I've seen better pictures of this fragment, and I will say that I would agree with him that this is probably, I'm not going to say it's certainly a Vav, but I would say if I had to
it looks like a Vav to me.
Yod and Vav, it's probably a Vav, which would, and that actually doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Kof, Aleph, Resh, Vav is not a word. It's not, which is why we tend to think this is a scribal error. This is a mistake that a scribe has made. And I'm going to show you another fragment here. I pulled it up. Here it is. So this is the other fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
A lot more legible.
It is.
I can see a perfect stomach. I can see a perfect lot. Yeah, you can see it. The shin, all that.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Very good. So the verse 16 in the English, verse 17 in the Hebrew, the like a lion, my hands and my feet, is down here on the bottom.
Wow, it's a scribble. Okay, so
And the word itself, Neil,
before you say anything real quick, I just want to let people know, what is the word for lion, and how do you get from lion to pierce?
Okay.
What's those words?
So the word for lion in Hebrew is ari, and it's prefixed with a preposition, which is the letter kaf, ke'ari, kaf, aleph, resh, yod,
Okay.
like a lion. Now, the confusion is that there's a form, there's a verb in Hebrew, kara, which is kaf, resh, hey. This is the verbal root,
Right.
and it means to dig, like digging a grave or
so
digging a pit.
Right. So that could be, someone can take that and say, that sounds like pierce to me, but it looks like it could be the word lion.
Yeah.
If it's not legible, you
So
can take the word lion and turn it into pierce.
like I can show you here essentially what has happened.
Right. So
We can probably
real quick, just to say, for an English example of this would be word ship, for
Sure.
example, can be translated in two different ways. Let's say 2,000 years from now, some alien technology, some alien race comes and looks at somebody might decipher the word ship differently. This is kind of not exactly the same because they are two different words. But the reason why I use that example is when it's so blurry like this, you can take a word that means lion and change it to a word that looks like the word you're looking for. That makes sense.
here is the verb that means to dig.
Right.
Keru. Okay. And here's the important difference. This means they dug.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll. Now,
Wow.
that
looks more like a lion than they dug, obviously, because the aleph changes the whole word completely, right?
It does. So, but this doesn't mean anything.
Okay. So now, real quick, just to jump in real quick, you said that people don't really know if it's a vav or a yod, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it's a yod, it's like a lion, and that's case closed. We're done. But because it might be a vav, we don't know what it is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it means to dig either.
No.
So that's
now the way that Peter Flint and the way that people who handle this particular scroll arrive at this as they dug is they're suggesting that this aleph here is a vowel letter. In lots of Second Temple, in lots of early Jewish manuscripts, there was no vowel pointing. Okay, it was just consonants. But in a number of places, they started to employ vocalic letters like vav, yod, and aleph.
Yeah.
As vowels.
Because they don't have vowels. Because essentially there's no vowel.
Exactly.
So you use letter vav for letter O, just so basic one. You use letter.
So
yeah, okay.
You got it. So the argument is that this here, keru with the aleph, is actually just a lengthened form of this verb that the scribe has supplied this letter. Now, if you'll bear with me,
yes, go ahead.
There's several points that I will make here to show that this absolutely cannot be the case. But before I get to that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this fragment here. The reading that we're talking about occurs at the very bottom. Here is the hey, the kof. Here's the vav, the pei. So this is the previous word. Peter Flint has actually read keru here somewhere.
Are you kidding?
Which I'm not. I'm not. It's actually
he just cited that's what it means.
I will actually pull it up for you.
Okay, so just tell everybody what are we looking at right now? What exactly?
So we're looking at Peter Flint's transcription. So this is what he is suggesting is on the bottom line 25, and you see the bottom margin here. he's suggesting this is what's on the bottom line of this fragment. So he's reading that from these letters here.
Well, look at those letters, by the way.
So
It's
right
just
on the bottom
so
here.
hard to see that.
It's crazy. So, and I'm going to suggest that, yeah, it's nonsense that you can even clearly see the kof or the resh to
No,
say
I don't see
nothing
anything. I don't see-
of whether this is a vav or a yod. I'm actually kind of while we're here, I'm interested to see what he says in his note. Here's his note. Okay, he says the central part of the top of kaf has flaked off, prior to which it had the same width and slant as that in Hokam Tem
I mean,
in 3 verse 18. The manuscript may well have had the grammatically correct reading, Keru, with a handful of Masoretic manuscripts and the Septuagint. The Mater Lectionis, which is the vowel letter, was inserted in Keru by 5-6 Hever Psalms, and that's the
tradition
Nachal Hever
misread.
Psalm.
Wow for yod. Wow.
Ke'ari. So I'm going to suggest to you that this is a nonsense explanation,
Yeah.
and here is why. Okay, I've got a few points to run through here. Okay, first and foremost, the word like a lion, ke'ari, in the Septuagint was translated with a word that means to dig in the Greek. It does not, in any context in the entirety of Greek literature, ever mean pierced, like to stab, right?
Yes.
Same with the Hebrew.
And that's what every Christian Bible right now has in their text is they pierced.
Correct. So this
so crazy.
is,
but go ahead.
it's never used as pierced, not once. Second, the word appearing in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll is Kof Aleph Resh Vav. If this is supposed to be a verb, the verbal root, ka'ar, does not mean anything that anyone recognizes in the entirety of Hebrew literature and is thus not translatable. Third, it is likely that the Greek translator of the Septuagint encountered a reading like this, something that looked like what we see in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll. He was confused by it because this is a word that doesn't mean anything, and decided to render it with horaksan, which means to dig. They dug, thinking that maybe this was a lengthened form of keru, the Hebrew verb, which means to dig. As in Greek, in Hebrew, this word always and only means to dig. It never, in any context that we know of, means to pierce. Not once. So at best, it means they dug my hands and feet, which, I don't know, means someone thought they looked really cool.
Yeah.
So,
but you know
okay.
what? And it just shows you how something like a lion can get malleable and be changed into pierce. It just goes, all it takes is you to change the word from lion to dig, because they look the same, almost the same. And then you take the word dig and reinterpret it to pierce. So it just shows you how
exactly
you can literally change the text. And when you translate a text from ancient Hebrew to modern English, you can make it say whatever you want. If you really try, if you really do the work and you can do whatever you want with it.
It can happen. So here's the money shot, though. I think this is the money shot. So the word in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll, Kof Aleph Resh Vav, cannot be construed as a lengthened form of the Hebrew verb keru. And here's why. This is what we call, within studying the Hebrew manuscripts, this is what we call orthography. Orthography is the use of vowel letters or the absence of vowel letters. And orthography tends to be fairly consistent. What I mean by that is a manuscript that has a long orthography where they inserted lots of vowel letters, they'll do it throughout the whole manuscript. other manuscripts that do not use any orthography at all. They do it throughout the whole manuscript. It's kind of a consistent thing. And here's the really important part. It's essentially based independently on each manuscript. So from one manuscript to the next manuscript, you're going to have different systems of orthography. And it's very important when you're reading an individual manuscript that you're paying attention to the specific orthographic system that is being used in that manuscript. So here's the kicker. The word in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll, Kof Aleph Resh Vav, cannot be construed as the lengthened form of Keru because the orthography or the spelling in the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll is extremely defective. It's really, really, really short. Even more so than the Masoretic text. So what that means is throughout the entirety of the scroll, there are no vowel letters. Not anywhere.
So that would make no sense to randomly in this one passage, the one that happens to be the one that's the blurriest, they just randomly put a vowel there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna continue here and finish up.
Go ahead.
So this means that vowel letters are never employed in this particular manuscript. It is virtually certain that the scribe of the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll misconstrued the yod in Ka'ari, which means like a lion, for a vav. This is something that happens with great frequency at the time because we don't know what the manuscript looks like that he's reading from, but it's very likely that he was reading from a manuscript where the difference between a vav and a yod was so slight that you just couldn't tell. So what happened? He wrote this word, Kof Aleph Resh Vav, which does not mean anything that we know of. The discovery of the Nachal Hever Psalm scroll has contributed to our understanding of the textual history of this passage, and it has confirmed without a shadow of a doubt that this reading in the Septuagint, Horaksan, he dug my hands and feet, that has been translated by numerous English translations as he pierced my hands and my feet, is the result of an accident. An accidental scribal error has produced this whole mess.
Wow, that is
so there we go.
That is so, you just explained it perfectly. That you're right, that is the kicker. If I didn't know that, you can almost lean towards Peter Flint, but now that you mentioned they never use vowels in that entire manuscript, why would it be that one sentence, the one that's the blurriest, happens to have vowels now? So you're right. It virtually doesn't make any sense.
And this is the really key point when you hear apologists talk about this manuscript. This is the key point that they never get.
Yeah,
they say, "Oh, it's Keru," and look at all these other manuscripts from the Dead Sea Scrolls,
right,
that use vowel letters.
So the different manuscript could be a different scribe. So
exactly,
that's
and
like
a different.
Yeah, that's like saying, "Oh,
different spelling
this book has this in it, so that means this book Harry has the same book too." Like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. And another kicker too. I mean, that was the kicker. You're definitely right. But another one that people should realize is when it comes to the Masoretic text, these Jews don't mess around. They write down exactly what it says, and it gets passed down like that. Like we said in the beginning of the show, when I asked you the question, was what we have today pretty much exactly what was written down before? And you even granted, most likely yes, maybe a couple of different changes, but mostly yes, especially when it comes to the Masoretic text. They did not mess around with this at all. So you have to lean, even if it's questionable, you have to render this as we have to go with the Masoretic text.